Good afternoon and welcome back to the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast. I hope everyone is well. As you may or may not know, we are now officially in the fall. And, I always point out that if you can try to live your life by the seasons, every season is a energy that's attached to it. As you know, the spring is all about planting seeds. Summer is all about taking care of and nourishing those seeds. And then the fall is about harvest, right? And then we reset and then we start with the spring again. So this is the harvest season. This is the time of the year to reap rewards for the seeds that you planted and nourished and to receive things back from the universe. And I always say, if you live your life according to the seasons, with the energy of the seasons, you're going to come up with better outcomes. So this is a good opportunity for you to take a back step, take a back seat, look at what you've done, calculate and chronicle your lessons learned and the things that you've gained, and then celebrate. And then take a break and then rest and relax before the next spring starts. So, this is a really, really good time to reassess things. And then also, to get a break from the hot weather and to cool off and all those kind of things. And that kind of brings us to my guest speaker for today, which I'm really, really excited about because she's an award-winning neurologist. She's the founder of the Brain Health Practice. She's also a best-selling author. She's an expert in migraine headache management. She's a public speaker, a thought leader, an expert on a topic that's very, very important and relevant these days, which is headaches. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our expert, thought leader, and award-winning neurologist and guest today, Dr. Swee Wong. Welcome, Dr. Wong.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. I'm so delighted to be here. And I love your opening about the seasons. Absolutely. You're kind of going by the rhythms. Oh, I love it so much. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to have you. Now, you're based in the United Kingdom. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I'm based in London, big city of London. And this is where I do my clinical practice. So I am a full-time clinician. I also do research and my place of practice is in the UK.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share just a little bit about your areas of expertise and your accolades with the audience here. And that way, hopefully they'll do some research online and some things like that. But Dr. Swee Wong is an award-winning neurologist. She's an expert in neurology, a neuro-ophthalmologist renowned for her transformative approach to brain health. With over a decade of experience at esteemed institutions such as the National Health Services, Dr. Wong specializes in managing migraine, headaches, and neurological disorders. Her transition from clinical practice to public advocacy underscores her commitment to making vital health information accessible to all patients. As the founder of the Brain Health Practice, Dr. Wong has developed the innovative Brains program, and that's spelled capital BRA, then lowercase parentheses I, and then uppercase NS. And that program combines mindfulness, yoga, and lifestyle changes to enhance brain resilience and balance the autonomic nervous system. Her approach demystifies complex scientific concepts, offering practical tools for patients and individuals to improve their brain health and overall well-being. And also, obviously, to help them overcome being afflicted by chronic headaches. Dr. Wong's extensive research background, which includes over 150 academic papers and several influential books, including Mindfulness for Brain Health and Break Free from Migraines Naturally, highlights her dedication to integrating holistic health strategies into everyday life. Dr. Wong's work with charities like the Visual Snow Initiative and Food for the Brain and her patronage of IIH UK reflects her compassionate commitment to supporting those affected by neurological conditions, including headaches. And Dr. Wong provides valuable insights into practical brain health strategies, demonstrating mindfulness, and then making lifestyle adjustments to lead to improvements in well-being and neurological processes. And so that's a little bit about Dr. Wong. Did I miss anything?
Oh, no, 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 you're so kind. Yes, absolutely. Really, the summary of it is that I've been very much doing a patient one-on-one in the clinics as a clinician, physician, neurologist, and I've recently started a more public-facing approach, just which is why I'm here to talk more widely about the kind of approaches that has been very effective in my clinics. Because I realized that talking more about this will empower people, will help more people. So yeah, so that is really the key summary, really. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I feel so blessed to have you here today. So there's so many misconceptions about headaches. And it's funny because when clients and patients of mine come to my office and they ask if they complain about headaches or things like that, they're coming to me usually to get past or help manage a mental health condition in a holistic way that includes a lot of the things that you mentioned, including mindfulness, but also, life coaching and hypnosis and hypnotherapy and things that I say massage the brain, massage the nervous system, massage the mind, things like that. A lot of times when I ask them about headaches, they all say they have migraines. And I remember, I graduated from my medical school in 2010, and I remember all the different types of headaches, the major types of headaches that we learned about tension headaches and cluster headaches and migraine headaches. And, there are all these other different types of headaches, like 6 or 7 different types that we had to know about. But now everybody seems to say that they have a migraine headache. And a lot of times, if I ask them real specific questions about their headaches, a lot of times they sound more like tension headaches or cluster headaches than they sound like migraine headaches, although they might have some migraine features. Tell us a little bit about maybe why everybody categorizes their headaches as a migraine these days.
I think there is more and more understanding about how migraine manifests. And migraine is one of the most common headache conditions, actually. And sometimes it could be felt like a cluster, clustering of things, or sometimes it could be felt like a tension.
Mhm.
And oftentimes with kind of figuring out with some additional symptoms, there could be a clue that it could be a bit more than just tension or a cluster headache. So as you would know, migraine is a neurological condition,
Yes.
and it's an instability of sensory processing, and it is a condition influenced by both genetic tendencies, and external factors, which is why I talk a lot about the kind of things people can do to get themselves better based on managing the external factors just to prevent migraines effectively. Because I always say, although we can't change our genes, we can change our environment. And that gives people
Absolutely.
the starting point of knowing, okay, I know what to do. I just know there's a systematic approach to this, which is why I ended up doing this brains thing. It's funny as you're just reading it out, because actually, yes, it was
Uh-huh.
representing building brain resilience
Right.
for the first part and balancing the autonomic nervous system. The little I in parentheses
Mhm.
is because of my subspecialties
Uh-huh.
actually also
Okay.
in the visual aspects of brain in
Aye.
neuro-ophthalmology.
Aye.
And
Yeah.
one of the commonest reasons people see me would be vision disturbance from migraines.
Mm.
So hence brains. But basically the
Ah.
external factors that I cover would be looking at a very systematic approach. So for example, the aspects that build brain resilience, from what people need to consider for their sleep that would be beneficial for them, their nutrition and the nutrients from it, their blood sugar balance, how the swings in the blood sugar effects can make it more likely for them to get migraine attacks, for them to think about gut health, that the gut brain connection is really key here. And then there are also other aspects with the autonomic nervous system. So it's not that it's bad to be kind of going on the sympathetic, which is more fight or flight, or it's good to be more parasympathetic, rest and relax. We need both. It's about the balancing of both,
Right.
which is why it's about being able to get in tune with what the body needs, which is why I love how you just talk about the seasons. You talk about the
Right.
seasons where you just get in tune with getting into a
Yeah.
rhythm. And in a similar way, I talk about how we balance the autonomic nervous system. We could use breath work, we could use mindful movement, mindfulness, we could do yoga type practices or hypnosis or hypnotherapy. So a repertoire of tools to balance all that, to make it less likely for somebody to get a migraine attack.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And one of the things is when I kind of look back at just kind of the basis of headaches, I remember when I was in medical school, there were like two basic hypotheses about where headaches come from. And I remember because one of them was like a kind of a cutting edge kind of new theory. But the first thing about headaches was basically that's one that's kind of based off of pressures, right? Like blood pressures in the cerebral hemispheres and things like that. So one of them seemed to be related to blood flow and blood pressure and things like that. But then there was a new theory, it was new at the time when I was in medical school, and they were doing a lot of research on it. And it was basically kind of related to that, but it was about inflammation. So, and it was related to inflammation in either parts of the brain or the blood vessels or nerves that were in the brain. Tell us, our audience, people who, don't have a medical knowledge of headaches and things like that. Tell them about what are some of the bases of where headaches come from, regardless of whether it's a migraine or a tension headache or a cluster headache and those kind of things.
Yeah, so I think basically when there is a sensation of pain, if there was something actively inflamed, like in an infective condition called meningitis, then
Right.
there's inflammation of the lining of the brain. So that's kind of where there is sensation, because inside the brain itself, there is no receptors for pain.
Right.
It's really where it comes from the surface or the lining of the brain, the dura. And sometimes people may feel, for example, oh, the pain is in a specific spot, say
Right.
behind the eye, and they think that there's a problem behind the eye. But in fact, what is interesting is that it's what we call a referred pain.
Right.
It's in that region. And the brain is thinking, oh, okay, it's that location. So there is this instability with how things are sensed, and probably through the trigeminal system.
Right.
So people may have heard of this shooting pain condition called trigeminal neuralgia. So that's
Right.
very classic. But in headache, like the migraine situation, the trigeminal system is involved, but it's not the condition of trigeminal neuralgia. But we know at the level of the brain stem, the base of the brain, where there's an integration issue with the sensory processing and the tendency for pain. It's really interesting what you said about the pressure and inflammation. And in fact, I think there are probably a few potential threads through for migraine. Some of it could be related to energy pathways. Hence, I talked about how the blood sugar balance is key. So, one of the key things I've noticed is that when people have got spikes of blood sugar, that will usually be followed by a crash of blood sugar. And I can sometimes pick up people who, depending on what they're eating for breakfast or lunch, how it can then trigger a later migraine that day. Really to do with the blood sugar fluctuation. So probably something to do with the energy pathways. We also know that inflammation is really an important aspect here. So hence I talked about the gut health in passing as well, because we know that what we eat and what the gut and the healthy or the bacteria within the microbiome, the environment in the gut is really important with what it produces and the chemicals that it produces and how it gets to the brain and the whole body's response to that. So those are some of the examples. For example, sleep is also really key, because that is about keeping to a regular rhythm that allows people to be able to flush out toxins in the deep sleep phase, for them to establish a regular pattern so they get more resilient emotionally, so to kind of to stabilize the stress impact to cause people to get more headaches or migraine. So those are kind of the examples.
And that's funny that you would mention that, because another kind of trend, it's like I haven't really thought about this, but some of the things that you've said, are kind of prompting memories of things that people said to me. So one of the things that I've kind of noticed is, and I haven't actually tabulated any of this, but I've certainly noticed patterns and correlations, maybe not causality, but correlations certainly, that a lot of people who complain of headaches also seem to have issues with sleep, like insomnia
Yes.
or hypersomnia and things like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a two-way street, so to speak, because poor quality sleep can make it more likely for people to get migraine. And in fact, when people have migraines, they often have difficulty with sleep.
Right.
So I oftentimes start off with saying about looking at your rhythms. Back to the seasons, now our body has its own internal rhythm. We have a body clock system called the circadian rhythm
Mhm.
that tells us when to wake and when to sleep. And when the body clock is on point, it allows us to have good quality of sleep. So you will know, and hopefully helpful for your listeners to know, that as one sleeps, we go through cycles in the night. So typically in the night, we go through about 5 or 6 cycles. And within each cycle, there are different stages that goes from light sleep to deep sleep to the rapid eye movement phase.
Right.
So if one gets to a regular pattern, the quality of each stage, whether it's the deep sleep or the REM sleep, it gets better because of this regularity. The body really loves rhythm and getting into rhythm that supports what the body needs to do. And when in the deep sleep phase, there was this remarkable thing that we discovered about 10 years, we as in the scientific community discovered, where there could be the channels opening through the shrinking of certain parts of the brain to allow channels of fluid flowing flush through. So it's called the lymphatic system. Your listeners may well know of this term called the lymphatic system.
Yes.
People may know about lymphatic massages or lymphatic things. So we know that
Yeah.
the public oftentimes know that the lymph flow is important for clearance of the toxins for the body.
Right.
And the lymphatic system, starting with the G,
Right.
is really important for clearance of the brain toxins.
Ah.
So I think all that's really, really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know in my first self-improvement book, Sweet Potato Pie for the Spirit, Soul, and Psyche, in chapter 2 is all about sleep and circadian rhythms and how to fix your sleep naturally. And so a lot of people who come to me with sleep issues, that's where I kind of direct them. And, in that chapter in the book, chapter 2, it talks about the neurotransmitters that are involved in sleep and circadian rhythms. And it also talks about, the different stages of sleep and the restorative theories of sleep, how sleep should be restorative because it's associated with basically utilities and processes to clean up things, repair. And so a lot of people don't start out on a good foot the next day if their sleep is lacking. And I know in my book, I also talk about lifestyle choices, diet, nutrition, even bedroom temperature and things like that, and the timing of when they fall asleep, because so many people these days think it's natural, or at least natural for them, to fall asleep at 1, 2 a.m. in the morning. And then they're surprised when they have headaches and other issues.
Yes, absolutely. And something that may surprise your listeners is that some people say to me, "Oh, they work a lot during the weekday. They're very sleep deprived. So on weekends, they try to sleep in. For example, if they're waking up at 6:30 in the morning, then on weekends they try to sleep in until 9 o'clock in the morning."
Right.
And in fact, when somebody sleeps in, it's more likely for them to get headaches that day.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is something where I oftentimes have the prescription of getting the regularity. So sadly, they oftentimes are advised to wake up early on weekends.
Right.
But we have a way to support that, because to avoid the sleep deprivation, I prescribe a nap during the weekends.
Right.
And if they work from home during the weekday, I prescribe a half an hour nap about midday as well during the weekday.
Right.
And we start talking about how they can figure out what time they go to bed, so that then after about 2 weeks of this pattern, they have a good grasp of what is the right amount of sleep for them. And then it's when they start to see some improvements with their sleep quality and, of course, the migraines.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's jump into some of the things that that you have expertise, some of the areas of your expertise, and also just some common questions that people ask about headaches and neurology as it relates to brain health and things like that. So, what are some of the, in your opinions, what are some of the connections between the health of the brain and I would also suggest the absence of headaches and the lifestyle choices that each one of us make on a daily basis?
So the question is about the headaches and the lifestyle choices.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very linked. So I mentioned about the migraines being a combination of genetic tendency
Yeah.
and external environmental
Hmm.
factors.
And blood
So
sugar.
another way to
Yeah.
absolutely another way to think about it is I like to give the example often of a migraine attack like a boiling pot of water that is overboiling. So
Hmm.
overboiling and the water spilling out of the pot is that's an example of an analogy to migraine attacks. So we can do a couple of things here.
Hmm.
One, we could remove the top of the lid of the pan,
Right.
create some space.
True.
That may not be enough. We may need to pour some cold water
Right.
onto the pan itself,
Right.
which will stop the water from overboiling.
Right.
And that could be the example of taking painkillers that could just have a temporary relief. But we can't keep pouring water,
Right.
cold water on top because it will overflow again.
Yes.
So what we do need to do is need to turn down the fire. And turning down the fire would be the lifestyle aspect. So the lifestyle aspects, we just spoke about sleep. We mentioned about the blood sugar and nutrition, gut health. We also mentioned physical activity is a big one as well. Physical activity has to be introduced with nuances because when people have a lot of migraines, during the time when they have a lot of migraines, that's when they may need to uh, have a more relaxing
Rest.
pace, like
Right.
going exactly
Right.
either actual rest or going for a little stroll rather than doing anything more vigorous.
Right.
And it's kind of in between between the migraine attacks for them to have a strategy, like a plan of what they can do to build their body's resilience and their brain resilience. And having regular physical activity in the different forms of it can help to build preventative aspects against migraine. So,
Right.
for example, I talk about moderate intensity physical activity. So that would be something like a brisk walk. And I often have a little tip to say, do the singing test.
Hmm?
Do you know what the singing test is, Dr. David?
No, a singing test?
Yes, a singing test.
You
I
mean
love
like
this
vocal
one.
cords?
Well, actually, I ask, well, very close, very close. I suggest for people to go for a brisk walk, and they have to walk at such a pace that they cannot sing a song. It's a singing test, but they
Gotcha.
can talk. They can talk. They can talk in short phrases. So that should be
Gotcha.
the base. That should be the base foundation. So that is one category, and I suggest to aim for a total of 150 minutes in a week. So on average, that's best to be split up. For example, 5 days a week of going for a 30-minute brisk walk with the singing test, or another activity like cycling or something else. And the other category would be to build strength. So
Okay.
important. And
Really?
it's for everybody, including women. There's a huge proportion there's 3-to-1 ratio of females to male who have, so more women
Really?
have migraines.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a key thing, historically, many places, the strength training in women are not emphasized. And I always say, don't be afraid to do strength training. It's so important because building muscle is really important. And from the point of view of migraine, it also helps to balance blood sugar. It improves metabolic health and it will stabilize blood sugar. And also, we know that activities like strength training or moderate intensity activity, it also boosts the brain derived neurotropic factors, BDNF, chemical in the brain that helps support the brain function. So there are loads of things, and of course, other things like the feel-good hormones, the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins that come from a regular physical activity. But it's kind of something that slowly gets introduced. So a really nice thing I tend to recommend so I do a mentorship. A migraine mentorship, where over 3 months I take people through the foundational aspects of the brain's program.
Okay.
for migraine prevention. So one of the things that that is really loved by my students is that they do a morning walk.
Okay.
They get the morning light for their circadian rhythm. Morning exercise also helps with the circadian rhythm, and it helps build their resilience against migraines. That's one nice little thing that people often say. Another tip for your listeners is that after eating a meal, I recommend people go for a little gentle stroll.
Okay.
A gentle stroll that helps with digestion and it helps to balance the blood sugar. So these things, perhaps your listeners could give them a try and let us know how it goes.
No, absolutely. No, those are great, great tips. And, one of the things that also comes to mind is one of the things you mentioned at the very beginning. As you may or may not know, I have a book that I wrote called The Nutrient Diet. And it's about a lot of things, but it's the first book of its kind that talks about the science and biochemistry and metabolics of the foods you put in your body. And then also the psychology of why people make the lifestyle choices that they make. So it tries to help people understand what to eat, what not to eat, the balance of different things to eat, but also about how to make changes to their lifestyle and diet in a way that makes sense based off their personality.
Yes.
And so, but one of the things that I talk about in the book, and one of the bases of the book, is this simple equation that input equals output. And basically, what that means from a dietary and nutritional standpoint is that whatever's happening in your body is partially a result of the things you put in your body. So if you don't put in the right things in your body, you're not going to get a good outcome. But if you put in better things in your body, then you're going to get better outcomes. And so it all starts with diet and nutrition. Now, in the beginning, you mentioned about gut health. Tell me a little bit about the relationship. And I know, for instance, one of the things that's commonly known, for instance, in psychiatry and fields like that, is that a lot of serotonin and other things are actually made in the gut. But everything that goes into your body is processed through the gut for the most part. So what is the link between gut health and brain health? And how are they linked?
That's a great question. And it's something that I think more and more people are starting to understand.
Yes.
So some people even call the gut the second brain.
Yes.
Because of the vast number of brain cells, the neurons, rather nerve cells in the gut within the networks. So it's even considered the second brain. So there's all these transmitters, as you mentioned, that gets produced. And the key thing is that it's a two-way street. Again, a two-way street coming up again, where there is a highway connection. You use the word highway. Yep, that's right. In the US, I'm trying to think
or interstate. Highway, interstate, any of those things.
Exactly. Between the brain and the gut through the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is cranial nerve number 10. And it comes from the word vagabond. And vagabond means the wandering, the wanderer, the traveler, because of how far it gets. The cranial nerve goes all the way to the gut and to different parts of the body as well. And there is this direct connection. So, for example, we talked about how the gut digests food. There's the microbiome, which is the bacteria in the gut, and hopefully most people will have more good than bad bacteria, so to speak. Good meaning it produces beneficial compounds and it helps the body digest food in a way that's beneficial for the body. And when there's chemicals or the molecules called short-chain fatty acids or other kind of things that's produced by the microbiome, it can get directly into the bloodstream. Some of it could even, or some of these chemicals could go directly through with the vagus nerve connection to the brain as well. So we know that there's this two-way direction. And many of your listeners probably have this experience of feeling so-called the butterflies in the stomach. And all the times when people are about to have a really big, like maybe a job interview or going on stage, some people just feel like, oh, I can feel something in the stomach. And some people may even need to go to the bathroom. And their gut is moving a bit quicker. And that is just to illustrate how there is a strong connection from brain to gut, and also the other way from gut to brain. So that highlights how it's so important with how we nourish. So I love what you just said about how do we what do we put into our body, and nourishing it. And what we nourish comes into our body. It can promote the growth of the so-called good bacteria, the gut microbiome, and to produce all these beneficial compounds. So I say things like, think of the vegetables or the fiber, the plant beans, the nuts, the legumes. They are like the so-called fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
think of the gut microbiome like the flowers,
Yes.
the plants in your garden. So in order for your garden to flourish,
Yes.
you need to feed it the right kind of fertilizer and water for it to be able to grow.
Absolutely.
So that comes from the food that we nourish. Absolutely. And so some of the things I recommend people to do, think about whole foods based approach.
Yep.
Which I think is really, really important for us to consider. You will know with prevalence of how much ultra processing of
Yes.
food is in our in the food situation. The US is a lot, in the UK as well. And
absolutely.
It's got all these all these compounds that could affect the gut. So I talk about going back to whole foods and mostly plants, having lots of variety of plants. And the more variety they have, it kind of gives more
Yes.
different types of fertilizers, so to speak, to
Yes.
the microbiome, and encourage different microbiomes to chew, to take time to chew,
Mm-hmm.
to take time to take deep breath, allow the body to digest. The body needs that resting and digesting, again, like the rhythms that you spoke about, so that then it can really benefit from these compounds. So yeah, these are the kind of things that I start talking about. Sometimes we talk about eating things that is fermented. Fermented foods such as yogurt, or you could say yogurt in the US,
Yep.
and or other things like, I love
cheeses or sour cream,
yeah, exactly,
things like that.
Exactly, sauerkraut,
Yep.
exactly. So things that will has both prebiotic, which
Yes.
is like the fiber, the fertilizer type, and the probiotic, which is the kind of the good bacteria
Yep.
for the body. So having these combinations would be great. Another thing I like to recommend is, I spoke about different varieties,
Yes.
to have as many colors, natural colors, of course, natural colors, whether
the rainbow.
leafy,
Eat the rainbow.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Like the green leafy vegetables. You want the leafy kind. You want to have the cruciferous, the crunchy kind for the detoxification pathways. You want the beans, the nuts, the seeds. You want to get all the magnesium, all the nutrients that's beneficial for migraine prevention. And, the blueberries, the aubergine, zucchini, you would say in the US.
Yeah.
All the different colors. Absolutely. So beneficial.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I talk about in my book is the notion that at one point, and I could be wrong, but I think this started in Europe, or more specifically in the UK. But at one point they started, because foods normally, things in the environment normally cover the rainbow. They're every color: green, yellow, brown, red, white, blue, purple, everything else. But at some point in the industrial complex, or the industrial age, they started bleaching everything. And so they would bleach sugar, and they would bleach flour, and they would bleach all these things. And now people are, now we've come to the point where we're saying, you know what, don't bleach it, because those pigments contain a lot of the things that are good for our body. And that's why I always say, eat the rainbow, because those colors, within those colors, are the things that help our bodies become more balanced.
Absolutely. And less bleaching, less processing.
Yes.
Also good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another thing too is, I did an episode, maybe, I don't know, God, I believe it was this season. I'm now in season 3, but I think it was this season. The episode was titled "Trust Your Body, because it's not lying to you." And the whole theme of that episode was about listen to your body and watch what happens when your body reacts to certain things. And so if you eat at McDonald's 5 times a week and then you start getting headaches, you should notice that connection. Or if every time you eat at Burger King, your stomach hurts and you have diarrhea and you have a headache, notice it. Or if every single time you drink as you know, people in the UK and in the United States consume large amounts of alcohol. And so one of the things that people will notice is they consume certain types of alcohol and they're more likely or less likely to get a headache the next day. And I think maybe
Yeah.
that's related to fermentation. I actually wrote a chapter about that in my book, The Nutrient Diet, as well. The biggest chapter is on alcohol and
Yeah.
and how to drink, things that make sense for you and your body and what causes headaches and things like that from the different things that are in alcohol, like for instance tannins and the other things, the other chemicals that are in alcohol that can lead to headaches and lethargy and things like that. But there's a huge connection. And right now there's this huge push, at least in the United States, on people looking at prebiotics and probiotics
Mm.
for their whole body health, not just their gut health, but for the whole body. And that brings in the connection that you talked about the gut being the second brain and the connection, the interstate, the highway between the brain and the stomach, or the gut and the brain and the skull or the cranium.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more we understand, the more we realize that there is so much impact of what we eat and our whole body. There is also this other piece, Dr. David,
Yes.
about ultra processed food. And I
Yes.
think there is this advocacy piece actually
Yes.
that's why I speak a lot about it. I actually even have a little book, it's a
Oh,
workbook called Quit Ultra Processed Foods Now.
huh.
And it really helps people to
Wait,
transition
what is it?
over a
What is it
6 week
called
period.
again?
Quit ultra processed foods.
Nice. Quit ultra processed foods. Okay, that's easy to
Yeah,
remember.
quit ultra processed foods
Uh
now,
huh.
with the now at the end.
Uh huh.
And really, it's a kind and gentle guide for people to transition away from being drawn to ultra processed foods. And I wrote in that just a passing comment, because it's a short book, that actually there is an advocacy piece here, because there are, I'm sure, also in the US and certainly in the UK, there are areas of what I would consider food desert.
Hmm.
It's so hard to get
Yes. Good,
fresh
healthy,
food.
whole foods.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
True.
So and oftentimes the low cost foods would be the cookies, chips, the
Yeah.
cakes, and it fills people, and which
Yeah.
is why you got all the
Junk
fast food,
food.
all exactly. And of course, then within that would be chemicals
Yep.
that make people crave for them,
And
and when
dyes.
we
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. So then I think there is this advocacy piece where actually when people want to buy fruit or vegetables,
Hmm.
it costs 5 times
Yeah,
that
it
it is to
does.
buy a packaged product.
Absolutely.
And I think the more people like us, we talk about this, we talk about the importance
Hmm.
of this, hopefully you'll create that market demand where people go, actually, yeah, all these places where currently are food deserts, we really need to get fresh food out there, and the people feel supported rather than a feeling like they don't have a choice, which I feel is one of the pieces to the story actually.
Yeah, and it's so funny because because of since COVID, inflation and what I call more properly, price gouging, that things have
Mm,
gone up so much in price. But, I don't have kids. I'm not married. I'm single. I just have to feed myself, and I. And I cook I bake a lot of fish. I do a lot of steamed vegetables and I share them on
mm,
Instagram and Facebook and things.
mm,
But it's funny because I think, and this was probably the case before COVID, but I think it's really highly magnified now. But like a family of four could go to McDonald's and fill up for the whole family, for
yeah,
$20. But if
yeah,
they went to a decent grocery store and bought healthy fish and
yes,
vegetables and fruits and legumes and things like that, it would
yes.
cost $30 or $40. And so
Mm.
it's like a tax for being healthy.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's where we need to advocate for kind of widely accessible, healthy, whole foods, so that people have choice. And this is the whole thing that drives me, is about giving people choice.
Yes.
Giving people choice on their health based on them getting good quality information.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me ask you another question. So this is another big piece of yours, and I love this topic. It's a what I call a high potency term these days. It's frequently used, and no matter how many times I bring it up, I like to ask my guests about what it means, the definition of it, but also why it matters. And that's the concept of mindfulness. I love the concept of mindfulness. I talk to my clients about it, and I also think the connection, at least for me, between mindfulness and insights, because in my opinion, being mindful leads to insights. And when you have lots of insights, that means you can institute changes and just kind of reboot the system. And so I love the concept of mindfulness because to me, that leads to the insights. And when you collect those insights, that can be the impetus, the inertia that you need to make changes, whether they be lifestyle changes or dietary, nutritional changes, or any other kind of changes. Tell me about how you see mindfulness and how it affects brain health.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yes.
I feel that there is a lot of opportunity for people to explore mindfulness. And it's not just confined to the classic image where people see of somebody sitting quietly to focus on their breath, the
Right.
meditation posture.
Right.
It's not just that. There's so many ways that we can bring mindfulness into I call mindful moments
Yes.
throughout the day. So I think I describe mindfulness as a quality of presence. It's not just being present and noticing, the quality that we bring to it.
Yes.
And that spaciousness that we could develop from it. So in the context of brain health, I'm so excited to say that I'm in the middle of doing a randomized control trial.
Oh, really?
Using mindfulness as a treatment for a
Wow.
neurological condition called visual snow syndrome.
Wow.
Visual snow syndrome is a rare condition.
What is it called again? I'm sorry.
A visual snow syndrome.
Visual snow syndrome.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It's a condition where it's a rare it's quite newly known over the recent years, and I'm glad for really great work by charities such as the Visual Snow Initiative, who have really been advocating for people with this condition.
Okay.
So what happens is that people with visual snow syndrome get really bad disturbance of their vision. It's like they're seeing snow storm in their vision, like the static of an out of tune television. And they have a lot of other visual disturbances and other symptoms that come with it. So we know that it's brain network dysregulation. So the brain image on MRI, the structures are there, but if the connections that's dysregulated. So in 2019, a few years ago, I first came up with this idea, this hypothesis that mindfulness training of the brain can treat visual snow syndrome. And this is based on the research from mindfulness about how it could really change brain networks, change the brain structures and things. So, yeah, I managed to deliver this piece of research that showed that it can change the brain networks. It was so exciting. It's the first time we managed to show that this can be a treatment for this condition. And now we are doing a randomized control trial. And it's because of this kind of I delivered this research. I helped many people through the mindfulness 8-week program, and I'm so touched by the stories of people benefiting from this, how their lives are changing, how their conditions improving. Which is why I have worked with the charities to get the mindfulness things up, and that's why I wrote a book called Mindfulness for Brain Health, which is designed to help people develop a mindfulness practice, not, in terms of moment to moment awareness. So let me read this quotation I love by Dr. Viktor Frankl, and it really sums up why I love so much about mindfulness. It's about spaciousness. So this is from Dr. Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. It's about spaciousness and choice. There you go. I love this
that
quotation.
I love that.
I
That
love
is
it so much.
brilliant. And what that makes me think of is, and I'm just obviously thinking off the cuff here, the right side of my brain and the left side of my brain are connecting and coming up with hypotheses
Love it,
and
love
things.
it.
And so I know, for instance, I remember one of my favorite professors from medical school, Dr. Brian Matayoshi. He's friends with mine on Facebook. He is a brilliant professor of physiology, and I learned so much from him. And some of the stuff that he taught, the connections or the insights didn't come until well after medical school. But one of the big things that I learned from him, or we learned from him as medical school students, is how the heart actually functions as both a pump and as a circuit. And a lot of times, and lay people look at the heart as something that pumps blood, but because of the technologies of EKGs and things like that, we also realize that the heart has waves and it has a circuitry and it's electrical and things like that. And one of the ways that helps me to kind of think about the brain in more dynamic ways is thinking of the brain as both a pump and a circuit as well. And so when you talk about that space, to me that makes a lot of sense, because when you have things that operate as either a pump or as a circuit, they need space or they overheat. And that's true even with technology. As they make computers smaller and smaller and smaller, they generate more and more heat. And so one of the things that they had to do at one point with computers is start building computers with fans inside to cool things out. And so I kind of think of the same metaphor with the brain. The brain has waves, it is a pump, it produces things, it's dynamic, it does a lot of things. And I think when you've got a lot of activity going on, it makes sense that you need space so some of the heat from all those processes can dissipate.
Oh, I love your example there of the computer and the fan and the space. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing is also that the mindful practice is it's not like, oh, let me focus on my breath now. Let me concentrate. There's a quality to it.
Yes.
There's a quality of the softness, that curiosity, that friendliness, that kindness, non-judgment. So it's actually a combination of various qualities that we bring from moment to moment. And that could start off with little practices. In the book, in my book, I share kind of various ways that people can start to settle the self-care approaches, and then allows more opportunities for mindful moments to happen throughout the day. And there is also the opportunity to listen to some audio recordings, some guided body scan meditations, some breath meditations, or mindfulness practices, or other types of practices that will help settle and bring in the mindful moments and spaciousness, exactly as you say, the spaciousness.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I stress with my clients, whether they come in with ADHD symptoms or depressive symptoms or panic attacks or anxiety symptoms or PTSD or whatever. I always say, let's take a multi-pronged approach. Let's look at your sleep. Let's look at your diet. Let's look at your exercise. Let's look at, how you allow your brain to rest. Let's look at whether you meditate or not, whether you use yoga, whether you use sound. And so one of the big things that I do to help my clients change is I actually give them audio products that help. And a lot of those products use binaural beats, and they use a lot of auditory techniques and methods to help clients change. And a lot of them swear by them, especially the ones that help with anxiety. And so, one of the big things that I've noticed is a lot of my clients who have anxiety or report having severe anxiety or panic attacks, they also have headaches. And so one of the things that I've noticed is when they listen to the audios, they actually have fewer and fewer anxiety attacks or panic attacks, but they also have fewer headaches too. And I think it's because of those sounds, that quietness, that stillness, the rhythms that are built into the music that allow things to slow down, and they help people kind of get back to a regular rhythm and cycle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Lots of benefits with these methods. I also share a few other methods, such as breath work and vagal nerve stimulation.
Yeah.
So the breath work method I love is a exhale focused breath. So if I were to describe it for your listeners, it's a case of I get people to first start off with noticing how quickly they take to breathe in the full breath, and then how quickly they take to breathe out. And then after they have established that, they take a full breath in, they count how long it takes, they hold their breath for that same duration, and then they breathe out. So the same amount of air that they breathe in, but they take a long time to breathe out to double the time.
Yeah.
And then they hold it again at the end.
Yeah.
The holding is important to avoid hyperventilation. So, for example, if somebody takes 4 counts to breathe in, they hold for 4 counts. They take 7 to 8 counts to breathe out, and then they hold for 4 counts. And I tend to get people to repeat that in 10 cycles. So they are just noticing the inner rhythm and managing the breath. So that's a really nice method. Another quick, short, sharp method would be they take a deep breath in, and at the top after they've taken the deep breath in, they take one more breath in, like a little sharp inhale, and then they do a long sigh out. And they just repeat that for about 5 to 10 times. I must say that both would work. And also there are other methods like the box breathing method, which is breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. I tend to prefer the exhale focused breath, so that then it allows the parasympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system, which is the rest and relax part, to just come up a little bit. Because oftentimes when people are right in the midst of really severe pain, their fight or flight response is really up and going. So it's about balancing, so bringing that in. And sometimes I'm bringing a humming. So I'm also a yoga teacher, as you may know, where the humming approach can lead to vibrations of the sternum, which is the chest bone or other bones of the body, and they kind of stimulate the vagus nerve. So I talk about the vagus nerve that has connection to the gut. It also has connections to the face and the chest. So I may get people to hum, for example, or to tap their chest bone, their collarbone, to tap certain parts, just to create a little vibration. And that also helps them to come to feel into the moment with the breath and the body. And that is quite a nice way to break when somebody's having pain or feeling anxious. Those are quite good methods.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, and I teach them relaxation methods. Particular methods that I like to use in my office are the Sedona method, which is a great mindfulness. It's a release technique. And, but I always tell my clients that breathing is the universal equalizer. So breathing is the thing that allows your body to reset. It's the easiest thing that you can do at any time in any place to kind of reset everything. There's another course, though, that's similar, because I don't do yoga, but the people that I know who do yoga swear by it. But there's a course, I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a doctor. His name is Dr. Chun-Yi Lin, and he's an internationally known doctor who speaks to doctors at conferences throughout the United States and Europe and other places. But he came up with this course called Spring Forest Qigong. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but Spring Forest Qigong is a technique that helps with a lot of medical conditions, and it's all based on breath work. And it's also based off sound. So when you said the thing about humming, it made me think about one of the techniques that he uses in his course is where he has people to say and other sounds, and it's just amazing how people are able to heal using that course. And like I said, his name is Dr. Chun-Yi Lin, and the course is called Spring Forest Qigong, but it's a great course, and it's based off that breathing technique and how breathing is a lever for kind of resetting the connections within your body.
Absolutely. I love a lot of the ancient traditions that really brings, when we start to look into, there's so much wisdom in a lot of the ancient traditions.
Absolutely.
Whether it's like the Qigong or the Tai Chi, which is another variations of that, or yoga. You have this, it's really, I think, of a combination of mindful movement, because somebody is really present with their body when they're moving. You're feeling the body, which is the whole Qigong or Tai Chi or yoga approach when it's practiced in a mindful way. And then you have the creation of sound and humming. And you said the Om thing, and there's probably more access to yoga studios where they may be doing what we call an Om bath. Have you experienced an sound bath with the Om sound before?
No. No.
Oh, it's quite something. It's quite something. It's almost like a choir of students saying the Om, and you then, as one about finish their Om, then the next person take it up, and the next person take it up. So it becomes like a wave of Oms throughout the room, and it's just like really so lovely because it's everybody's together, and I suppose it's like the benefits of singing in a choir. There are people who love their choirs, and in the choir, they come together, they sing together.
Harmony.
There's social bond, the harmony, the vibrations. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to be said for all those practices, the combination of mindfulness and breath work, and then extending that to sounds and music and such things. So powerful.
Absolutely. And there's another thing that I heard of. I know a few people who actually have courses in it, but I learned about it when I did my training in hypnosis and hypnotherapy and things
Mhm.
like that. And it's a technique from Hawaii that's called huna.
Ooh,
And
tell
it's
me
all
more.
about sounds, and it's really, really interesting. You should check it out if you haven't already. But it's
Yeah.
called huna, and it's I wouldn't do it justice with the with the definition I provide, but I know it's the use of sound to channel energy, and it's
Yeah.
really, really, really interesting. So Huna's a very interesting technique too in terms of channeling sound. I love all these things. Oh my God, I've
Yeah.
learned so much today from you in terms of brain health and a holistic approach to the brain and all the variables and factors that affect the brain. If you could give the listeners one solitary piece of advice about brain health and mindfulness and all those kind of things in terms of what they can do, what's the biggest thing that you'd say?
The biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. If there was
I
one.
think the biggest thing is the mindset of be kind to yourself
Mhm.
and keep an open mind.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Because, and that makes so much sense because everything that you said today about, headaches and energy imbalance and all those things are about pressures building up. And
Mm.
pressures build up in closed systems. But when a system is open, that allows for the relief of pressure. So I love that. And I think that's a great unifying thing. Thank you so much for being a guest today. I feel like we need like another 2 or 3 episodes just to tap into all the things that you hold expertise in and that you could share about a holistic integrative approach to optimal brain health and about your brain's program and about mindfulness and all those kind of things. Dr. Wong, Dr. Swee Wong, can you please tell the listeners where they can find out more information about some of your opinions and thoughts about brain health and healthy approaches to getting rid of headaches and all those kind of things? Where can people find you? Tell us about your books and your presence online and how they can book you and all those kind of things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that question.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So, I have written some books, and
Yes.
it's all about empowering people with their brain health and practical strategies. I'm very practical, and
Uh-huh.
I like to give
Love
people
it.
actionable steps.
Yeah.
So, I have written a book called Mindfulness for Brain Health,
Uh-huh.
and it's an easy to read and accessible way. I've had a lot of lovely feedback, and it's one of the most gifted books
I
that
heard it
one's
was a
made.
bestseller too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was a
They
bestseller.
buy it, they read it. Exactly. Thank you. So kind. So that was my very first book, and it's very special to me.
Congratulations.
And I've written the Break Free from Migraines Naturally.
Yes.
And I've had great feedback as well. And it takes people through the different steps for them to action. And if people want to work with me more closely on migraines, I also have a migraine mentorship, which I'll mention more in a moment.
Hmm.
The other 2 books I have at the moment are workbooks. So workbooks for people to just go through step by step, and it's very accessible for them to reflect through and make little changes. So one is called, I mentioned, the Quit Ultra Processed Foods Now. So
Hmm.
that book is about ultra processed foods. And another book is Sleep Better to Thrive.
Mm.
It's a step by step way for people to improve their quality of sleep and the challenges that come with it. And I'm so excited that I have a book coming out at the
Oh.
end, towards the end of this year,
Uh-huh.
around in November. It's called Sweet Spot for Brain Health. So it's about balancing blood
Oh.
sugar and all the energy pathways to that. And so I love for your readers to find me, and they can find me on Amazon and other platforms. But Amazon is probably the most accessible way if they search my name, Dr. Swee Wong. I have a Thursday Tips newsletter for bite-sized brain health tips to thrive. And
Uh-huh.
it's a very short
Cool.
1-minute read. And I just distill through some little tips, 3 tips with one question at the end. I've had really lovely feedback about that. So yeah, so
And what's the
that's
name of your
bit.ly.
newsletter?
Thursday Tip, because I send it out Thursday.
Okay, Thursday tips. And how can they find that newsletter?
Thank you. It's on bit.ly, that's bit.ly forward
Okay.
slash Dr. Wong Brain Health. So that's DrWong
Okay.
BRAIN Health, Dr. Wong Brain Health. My website, which if people kind of find it didn't quite catch that, is drsweewongmd.com. So that's DRSUIWONGMD.com. I would love to stay connected with your listeners and signing up to my Thursday tips, then they'll get alerted to my books as well and any promotions.
Absolutely. So let me make sure, because I'm gonna get every single one of your books and your workbooks.
So kind, Dr. David.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No. Oh my God. I need to learn a lot about this stuff about brain health. So I will be getting all of your books, and I'll also be signing up for your newsletter. Let me make sure that everybody's got the name, the exact website address. So that's D as in David, R as in Rich, and then the letter S as in Sam, U as in universe, I as in interstate, and then Wong, W as in world, O as in operator, N as in Nancy, G as in gold, and then the letters MD, M as in money, D as in dog.com. Is that correct?
That's right. That's my website. And if people sign up to my mailing list, then they'll get an email from me with a newsletter with all these links. So it's bit.ly, that's B for Bravo, I for India, T for Tango, .L for Lima, Y for Yankee, / Doctor, that's D for Denmark, R for Romeo, Wong, W for Whiskey, O for Oscar, N for November, G for Golf, Brain as in B, as in the brain, our brain, BRAIN, and health as in our health and well-being, HEALTH. So Dr. Wong Brain Health.
Awesome. Oh my God. Thank you so much for being a guest today. I've learned so much, and I cannot wait to dive into your books and to get your mailing list. Thank you so much for being an expert guest on neurology and headaches today. And I would love to have you back as a guest again on the show.
I'd love to come back. Thank you so much, Dr. David. It's such a joyful conversation. It's so wonderful that you have been advocating for all this for your listeners and the work that you do with your books and your clinical practice. So it's such a privilege to be here. Thank you for this invitation.
Thank you so much. And with that, guys, we're going to leave. Definitely check out Dr. Swee Wong's books. And like I said, her name, her first name is spelled SUI, but it's pronounced Swee, like Swee as in the word sweet. So Dr. Swee Wong, check out her books on Amazon. I promise you they will benefit you. I'm going to get every single one of her books and her workbooks, probably a few copies for my office, and then to share with my clients and everything. I will definitely be getting on her mailing list. I would love to have Dr. Wong to write an article of her choosing for my website that I can share there with a link to her website so that people can get some of her knowledge and wisdom. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.